All right, I believe we are live. Welcome to Dental Speaker Institute Live. I'm your host, Vanessa Emerson, founder of Dental Speaker Institute, and tonight I'm super excited to be here with Dr. Paul Homoly. Welcome, Paul.
Hey, I'm excited to be here too. This is a new thing for me. You know, this video conferencing makes it so much easier for speakers and thought leaders to kind of reach out into the cosmos to reach a lot of people. So I'm looking forward to today's our conversation.
Oh, I am too. And I'm so glad that you're here. I know you always have so much wisdom to share. So thank you for taking time to, I'm sure we have multiple people who are tuned in to hear from you tonight. So as we get started, Paul, I'm going to be just double checking to make sure we're really live. And I'm going to ask you if you could just give us a couple minutes of a little bit about you. What has brought you to this point where you are now mentoring dental speakers and consultants? Give us a little bit of your background.
Okay. Well, you know, I practiced implant and reconstructive dentistry for 20 years, Vanessa, from 1975 to 1995. And, you know, I left practice due to an eye disability, but prior to leaving practice, I had already started a dental consulting company. I was helping dentists implement full mouth reconstructive practices, dental implant practices, high-end sort of thing. So I had a bit of a reputation already in the restorative and implant market. Well, after I retired, it was really impractical for me to teach clinical because I wasn't practicing anymore. So what I did is I really looked at, well, what was it that made my practice successful? What did I do to be able to implement new technology that's relatively high fee, that insurance did not pay for? There was no guarantees of outcomes. And I wrote my first book called Dentist and Endangered Species. That was back in 1995. And from there, things just kind of took off for me. I ended up speaking to some study clubs. I wrote 4 more books. And the next thing I know, I'm sitting here now. As really, I wear 2 hats. I wear 2 hats. First thing, you know, relative to our work together is that I train key opinion leaders. I train speakers, people who have something important to say and something important to sell. I also work with dentists, clinicians, group practices relative to improving their case acceptance. I have a whole body of work called Making It Easy for Patients to Say Yes. We do webinars on it and workshops and online programs, and you name it, we got it done. So right now, it's actually life is pretty good. Life is pretty good. I'm living in Scottsdale, Arizona now. As you know, I moved here from Charlotte, North Carolina, and we're enjoying it. We love it out here in the West. The workshops are full. People are happy. Life is good. So I've got no complaints.
Oh, that's awesome. And I love that we're practically neighbors after all nowadays. And I love the facility where you're holding your workshops as well. We held our Jumpstart there in January. It's such a nice facility. Right. Those are wonderful workshops. In fact, I would love if you would tell us a little bit more about it. So you mentioned that you do work with speakers and consultants. Let me just side trail, go down a rabbit hole for a second. I love the title of that book. Was it Dentist or an Endangered Species? Was that what that was?
Yeah, Dentist and Endangered Species, yes.
I love that.
That was my first book.
That's awesome. So tell us more, Paul, around how you work with speakers and consultants. So you mentioned you have workshops. Could you tell us more about those?
Yeah, there's a couple of different ways. Typically what happens is that someone will see me speak in an association meeting. Let's say I'm talking about case acceptance. And they'll say something like, well, we really like your content, but we also really enjoy the way you presented your material. How can we learn to do that? That happened to me the first time. Came up to me and said, hey, we really like your communication style in front of the room. Can you come to Baylor University, where Bill then was the head of continuing education? Can you put on a train-the-trainer program for our professors, our instructors? Mm-hmm. I said, I've never taught people how to speak before. He said, come on, it will be fun. So I went there. We have 5 or 6 clinical professors in the room. And I talked about how I put a story together, how I make content, you know, high-level content interesting to listen to. Because here's the irony. Just because you're an expert doesn't make you interesting. You see, that's the whole deal. And how many times have we sat through workshops and seminars where the content up on the screen is terrific, However, listening to it can be a death march. You just, slide after slide after slide, and no energy, no interactivity. Well, I never liked that. I liked stories. I like to engage the audience. For me, it's kind of like having a conversation with a whole room full of people all at one time. Well, that experience led to me beginning to offer workshops on it. I was no longer in practice. I needed to eat. I needed something to do. And so I put out remember those big jumbo postcards? This is all before the internet now. I put out the big jumbo postcards, sent them to a bunch of people, and you know what? It's been a great ride ever since. We really offer a couple different avenues for speakers. I'd recommend that people start with the workshop called "Just Because You're an Expert Doesn't Make You Interesting." That really focuses on platform skills, delivery, and program architecture, how to put a talk together and how to deliver it in a way that it's easy to listen to and easy to remember. It's a 2-day workshop. Following that, usually about 3 or 4 months later, the second workshop is called "Just Because You're a Speaker Doesn't Make You a Thought Leader." Now, that program has really got some muscle to it. What it's about is really two things. One, how do you gain insight into your existing content? The fact is that a lot of speakers have been, maybe they've been presenting the same thing time and time again. It improves incrementally, but not a big seismic change in innovation. So what that workshop is about is how to see the newness in what you've been doing. And number two, how to discover new and original ideas. It happens to all thought leaders. It happens to all speakers. You get all excited one day. You thought, you know what? I've got some time on my schedule. I'm going to sit down at my computer. I'm going to bang out some original content. I'm going to think outside the box. So you sit there, Vanessa, and there's that little cursor on your computer going like this, waiting for you, and nothing comes.
Yeah.
The whole idea of thinking out of the box, it's easier said than done. And what the workshop is about is it's not about thinking outside the box. It's about how do you process outside the box. And you got a bit of that last year at Jumpstart 2018. What is the thought process around discovering original thought, not only about your own material, but discovering a completely new content? That's what that's about. And they're following that. There's personal coaching and speech writing and everything that goes into that. The aspect of my business that is probably the most vigorous and demanding on me is leading key opinion leader programs. And I do that for Ivoclar and Ormco and Noble Biocare. And I led the Sirona Speakers Academy for years, American Orthodontics, Dentsply. These companies have content experts who will present at meetings. They'll also have on their affiliate list, or they'll have advocates for their products. So many clinicians who are using CAT scans or dental implants or specific devices or materials in dentistry, manufacturers will hire to speak at association meetings. They'll sponsor them. You know all about that. Well, these companies hire me to train their key opinion leaders. And that is fantastic work. I absolutely love doing it because what it does, it interfaces me with the corporate environment, which is a different animal altogether. Plus, typically key opinion leaders are some of the best dentists in the country. These are the best customers of the company. Plus, they're master clinicians. So it really stretches me.
Yeah. Wow, that's awesome. It's so impressive to be invited to train at that level. I know with some of the corporations that you've worked with, they've had probably hundreds of speakers, I would imagine, that you've helped train at different times. So, Paul, as I'm listening to you here today, I'm reminded how, and I know I've probably told you this story a million times, but I don't know that our listeners have heard, but I remember I first met you at my first National Speaker Association meeting.
Yes.
Atlanta, which was an important year for you because I was there when you walked across the stage to receive your award for earning the Certified Speaking Professional, which is NSA's highest designation. And it's really quite a rigorous curriculum and guidelines to follow to receive that. And I believe you're the only dentist in the world to have earned that. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, I was the first dentist. Recently, David Moffat down in Australia picked up the CSP. I saw that. So congratulations to David. He and I spoke together when we were in Denmark together. CSP designation is a very rigorous. It's beyond getting a mastership in the Academy of General Dentistry. You had to document 5 years of speaking, give 80 clients as references. They had to rate you at 90% or better. Then you went through an oral and written exam. It took me several years to get that designation. And plus, you really got to get off your wallet to make it done too, because there's a lot of administrative work. But it's the highest earned designation in professional speaking. And it just put me in a new class, to tell you the truth. You just run with bigger dogs and you get invited to different meetings, and I've enjoyed it. I think that from the standpoint of practicality, the thing that helped me the most, Vanessa, and don't get me wrong, and National Speakers Association is great, but the thing that I really gave me a jumpstart was Toastmasters International. You know, if you're a beginning speaker, even an intermediate speaker, the problem that you have is you don't speak enough to get really good. If you don't spend enough time in front of audiences just to kind of get the vibe of the experience, it'll take you years and years and years to get to the point where you really, really sustain your authenticity and influence on an audience. And you can't get there if you're speaking 3 times a year. Toastmasters, though, you can be speaking every week, 5 to 7 minutes. They've got a great curriculum. It's not expensive. There's hundreds of clubs all over the country. Oh boy, even for experienced speakers who are trying out new stories, new introductions, I suggest go to Toastmasters, try it out there. Another great resource for speakers is the National Storytellers Association. They're headquartered out of Jonesboro, Tennessee. And boy, I personally, the best speakers, that is speeches that move me, I've heard through the National Storytellers Association. Just like, wow, it's so wonderful, wonderfully. But you really got to be into crafting a message and really think about speaking not so much as content delivery, but think about presentations as a performance. Think about it as art. And that's when the National Storytellers Association will really help you out.
Oh, that's so fabulous. Thank you for that tip. I have never heard of them. Maybe you told me before and it didn't register, but I'm definitely going to go check them out. Couple things. I love that you said Toastmasters, because I always, when I speak on the circuit with this So You Think You Want to Speak presentation that I offer to dental professionals, that's my first tip, because it is so affordable and they're everywhere. And they now have virtual clubs. So if you're out somewhere in the middle of nowhere where you feel like, oh, they're not going to have a club here, you can belong to a club in Phoenix, Arizona, even if you're in Iowa. Not that Iowa's the middle of nowhere, but you know what I mean. So there's options for people to be able to participate there. I love that. And thank you for sharing that, a tip for National Storytellers Association, because that is very much an important part of presenting, is being able to have that, those stories. You know, as I was going down memory lane thinking about meeting you all those years ago, as many years ago, was that probably 15 years ago with the CSP? Easily, yes. Yeah, it was a while ago. You know, since then, I've been to your workshop for speakers, and I want to just share that here, I was so privileged to be able to attend that a few years back, and was so impressed with, first of all, your storytelling ability. You know, I think that's one of the things that first day that has, I can still picture elements from that story, the way you slapped your leg or the way you turned your head, or the point that was made. And I think as educators, as speakers, we all want to be able to have that impact and influence on our audiences. And a second thing that I think was probably even more importantly for me that I walked away from that workshop was you taught us how to sit down and within just a couple of minutes to craft an hour worth of presentation. In fact, we did it multiple times, and we
sure.
It was just so impressive that we would take a topic that none of us had really expertise in, but we thought, well, I think ours was something about we were going to have a camp for parents that needed help with child rearing or something. We came up with something and we crafted all the different elements. And I just want to really emphasize to our listeners who have not sat in on that. And that is just because you're an expert doesn't make you interesting for speakers course, and I'm going to put the dates up here. And pardon me, I think I've got a cat walking behind me in the background. I can't really see right now. I'll put the dates up here. I think our next opportunity is in February 28th and March 1st in Gilbert for that particular course. So I would say it's a run, don't walk opportunity for speakers to be sure they take part of. That's the 2-day course, isn't it, Paul?
Yes. The way life is right now, who has time to really sit down and pour into the structure of a presentation? What many speakers will do is they have their slides, they've got their PowerPoint program, and they put it all in there, and then when the day for the presentation comes, or maybe the day before, they'll put it on slide sorter, they'll look at all the slides and they'll kind of think through it. Then they get up and present, and they're using the slides as a teleprompter. They're just reading their slides. They're just hitting the button. And they call that a lecture. And it is a lecture because it's not a conversation. You can only be as good as a speaker as the way you rehearse. And the problem with rehearsal is that no one teaches it, not at the level that a professional speaker would do. Understand that I'm not dealing with professional speakers. I'm dealing with dentists and team members and consultants who have expertise in other areas, and speaking is a distribution system for. They also have online programs and books, but it's the speaking piece. It's the speaking piece that really connects, listeners to speakers. And so how do speakers rehearse? Typically, dental speakers don't rehearse. What they do is they just organize the material and then present it in teleprompter fashion. And I'm not saying that it's wrong. I'm just saying you're not going to get very big checks if you do it like that. You're not going to get a lot of invitations to do other programs like that. And you're really not going to build your brand. If you're going to, as a speaker, as a thought leader, as a key opinion leader, you've got responsibilities and you have privileges. The privilege of being the key opinion leader, or the privilege of being invited to an association meeting. I mean, think of it, Vanessa, how many dentists and team members or industry members get to stand in front of a group and give their ideas? I mean, that's a privilege. It really is. But there's also a corresponding responsibility that if somebody's going to give you the privilege of doing that, be the best version of yourself when you show up. Don't just show up in flip-flops and ad lib and use your slides as a teleprompter. You're blowing great opportunities, and sometimes 10% better rehearsal will give you 100% better result in front of the room.
That's a really great tip. It makes me think about years ago, I heard Jane Atkinson speak. She's another NSA colleague who is author of The Wealthy Speaker. And I'll probably misquote this, but along the lines of the measuring stick that we use to know if we have prepared enough with our presentation, both the presentation skills and the content development, is, are we getting spin-off business every time we speak?
Absolutely. That's the only test. I'll have speakers come up to me and say, and this happened to me last year. This is a true story. I just finished maybe a 2-hour talk at a speakers meeting, and there's beginning and intermediate speakers there. And one of the attendees came up to me. She says, boy, you know, if I only could get sponsors, I know I would be more successful. I said, really? I said, tell me about your last 3 or 4 talks. I said, how many invitations did you get from that talk? She says, well, none yet. I said, well, maybe you don't need to get sponsors. Maybe you just need to get better. And she didn't love hearing that because she was looking for an easy way. There is no easy way. If there was, it's rehearse such that when you give your presentation, it's almost a deja vu experience. It isn't that it's memorized, but it's internalized. There's a difference in that. And so I think about it. I don't think about presenting. You've seen me talk plenty of times. I think about performing. And if you were to perform, how would you rehearse? You look at Celine Dion or the Eagles or any of the great musicians or any of the great bands or any of the great performers or any of the great athletes. They spend the majority of their time, probably 80 to 90% of their time, rehearsing and practicing. And their performance careers are relatively short compared to the entire amount of time they spend in the profession. So it's the quality of your rehearsal that is so big and so ignored in our field.
I agree with you 100%. And I think to piggyback on that is also the power of the story. It goes a long way in helping as well. So stories are the magnets. Stories are the anchor. You know, yes. One of the things that speakers need to constantly do is constantly re-earn listeners' attention. Yes.
If they don't do that, listener attention slumps, and they could be giving a very important content point. But if people aren't listening, they're daydreaming about something, then they miss the point. If they miss the point, then what's the sense of even saying the point? Stories draw listeners in. They draw listeners in, they put them in a listening mode. So when you pique their interest with a story, then you make your point. Pique their interest, make your point. And stories are just a great way to do that. And here, you know, I'm going to be talking about storytelling at Jumpstart 2019. I'll be bringing some new stuff for you there. But here's my advice. When people say to me, well, I don't have any great stories to tell. I've never climbed Mount Everest, or I'm not a cancer survivor, or I never won Wimbledon. They're thinking in stories in terms of superlative events. Stop that. The best stories, Vanessa, are about ordinary moments told extraordinarily well. Ordinary moments, because everyone has experienced those. And I would say to you and everyone who's listening to this, if you want to discover a story, I want you to think back just in the last few days, what event, what's happened to you that's moved you? My wife and I were watching Bachelors in Paradise last night. Okay? You know, and my wife loves it, and I sit there because it's fun for me too. And when we kind of talk about the different characters and what's going through it. And one of the scenes was this man and this woman are getting along real well. And I don't know if you know the story, but another guy comes in, asks her out, and the man is heartbroken. He's heartbroken. And he's sitting there, and the guy's a muscle man, and he's crying, and he's desperate, and he doesn't know what to do. And I'm sitting there, and I'm tearing up and go, this poor guy, he's going through this on TV. Well, could that be a story? Sure, it could. I could relate to it. The other day, I was sitting down watching TV with my wife, and we're watching Bachelor in Paradise, and there was this incredible scene where this man and this woman, their relationship was really interrupted or destroyed by an outside event. You know, and each one of us has the opportunity to create events that can either help or hurt other people. So let's talk about those things. So what it is, it's just a little slice of life that you bring to life. And oftentimes it acts as an excellent little bridge into your topic. It's called a transferable concept. And I'll be talking about that at Jumpstart 2019.
And I am so excited. Thank you for mentioning that, because that's where my mind was going too, is with this topic and the conversation, because I heard you talk about that to some degree during your speakers workshop that we were mentioning that I had sat through before. And then also in January, when you gave us a little taste of your thought leadership workshop.
There you go.
I think what you're going to be doing for us, Jumpstart, and I'm so excited to announce here, is that Paul will have the major chunk of workshop there on the second morning. The majority of that morning is going to be a deep dive into story selling and thought leadership. And I am so excited that we're going to be able to all participate and learn from you there, Paul. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Well, you know, the thought leadership piece, I'm going to suggest to you, fasten your seatbelt on that, because it is something that will challenge you the way you think, to challenge you the way you put a program together. And it's stood the test of time. And, you know, the body of work is still being assembled. I have it probably halfway built right now, but the half that is built is really, really good. So you'll hear story selling, how to craft an original story from a personal event of your life that you can link to your topic. So you can pique the interest with the story, then make your point. The second piece will be how to discover original, how to refresh what you've been talking about, how to get out of the role of thought repeater and into the role of thought leader. And you got to be ready for that one, Vanessa.
I honestly, I'm so excited. I can't wait. I think it is just really compelling, a really compelling topic. And as I work with speakers and consultants now I'm into my 18th year working in dentistry as speakers and consultants. Yeah, well, I know we can't be that far into this, right? But we are.
No, we just started.
I know, it seems like. But one of the things we talk about a lot is how do they differentiate, you know, with their topics. And I think this thought leadership topic is such an important part of that. So, no, I know we're getting close on our time, Paul, and there's a couple of things I want to be sure and mention here. I'm going to put up here for those who are listening in. We did run the dates on here for the just because you're an expert doesn't make you interesting, which is what I, in my mind, think of the speaker workshop, that you might call it something different. But we showed those as February 28th and March 1st, and I didn't have a chance yet. With the just because you're a speaker doesn't make you a thought leader, I'd like to put those
that's December 6th and 7th. There we go. December 6th
and 7th. So that would be the next opportunity. I'm going to be at that workshop. I cannot wait.
Yes, you are.
Here in lovely Gilbert, Arizona at the Falls. It's a wonderful opportunity. And I know you mentioned that you had something you wanted to suggest as far as preparing for Jumpstart, an opportunity for,
yes.
Can you take that and run with it?
Yeah, I take, participating with the Dental Speakers Institute very seriously, Vanessa. I really got to take my hat off to you too. I remember years ago when we first started talking about this sort of thing, and now you've got this going. So congratulations. And I tell you, I'm grateful for being a part of it. It's fun for me. I get to hang out with other speakers. I try out new material. I'm going to bring new stuff every time I come to you. You know that. So here's what I suggest. Text the word expert, EXPERT, to the address 444999. And what you're going to get is an email opt-in from me, allowing me to send you 3 quick start videos. Watch these videos before you come to Jumpstart 2019. I'm 2 years behind. I also use these videos as pre-work for my workshops, so they can give you kind of a preview of coming traction. But if you get those videos, then you'll have a head start on story selling and a couple other stagecraft techniques that I think you'll really like.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you so much. And I'm going to run up here. We've got that text expert to 444999 for those of you who are watching. And also, to learn more about Jumpstart 2019, that is just jumpstart2019.com. Our dates are January 3rd through 5th, 2019 in Chandler, Arizona. And Paul, if we wanted to learn more about your courses, I'm going to put up here paulhomoly.com would be the right website to visit.
Yep, that's it.
And if we would like to reach out to you with any interest in any questions as far as your workshops or that sort of thing, we would, paul@paulhomoly.com would be the correct email?
That's right.
Very good. Well, this has been fabulous. Thank you so much for sharing with us. We've learned multiple great tips. So, for Facebook Live, and it's just a real short format, it's really been power packed. And we've got some of our notes here are just really thanking us for such a great discussion and a great topic. And I really appreciate you being here to share with us, Paul. Before we go, is there one more thing that you want to share, or maybe a one-line bottom line that you'd like to share with our listeners around as dental speakers?
Yes, I think, and it's the title of my 4th book, which is Just Because You're an Expert Doesn't Make You Interesting. Don't rely on your content to build your speaking career, because content is almost commoditized. There's content everywhere. What really will differentiate you as a speaker is going to be your creativity, your originality, your thought leadership, and your delivery. Now you take those things and you put great content into it. Now you got something. So don't rely on just being smart. Being smart is not good enough. You need to perform as well as inform. Absolutely.
Well said. Thank you so much, Paul, for tuning or being here with us tonight. And thank you for our listeners. We've had multiple people who've been watching and giving us some great comments. Thank you guys for your feedback. Thanks for being here. We look forward to seeing all of you at Jumpstart 2019 in January. Reach out to info@thedentalspeaker.com with any questions. And until next time, which will be next week, same time, same bat channel.
All right, good enough. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.